A huge policy shift tonight for the U.S. regarding Israel. President Obama choosing not to veto a United Nations Security Council resolution condemning Israeli settlements in Palestinian-claimed territory, then demanding they stop.
The resolution basically says that Israel's settlements on Palestinian territory that have been occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, have to, quote, no legal validity.
The U.S. has in the past almost always vetoed such measures, but not this time. Not even after Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu urged a veto.
Israelis deeply appreciate one of the great pillars of the U.S.-Israel alliance, the willingness over many years of the United States to stand up in the UN and veto anti-Israel resolutions. I hope the U.S. won't abandon this policy.
President Obama stabbing Israel in the back on his way out of office in what many are calling the ultimate betrayal in America's alliance with Israel. The Obama administration earlier today allowed the United Nations to pass a resolution condemning Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank as, quote, a flagrant violation of international law. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reacting by saying, quote, Israel rejects the shameful anti-Israel resolution at the UN and will not abide by its terms. Netanyahu adding, quote, the Obama administration not only failed to protect Israel against this gang up at the UN, it colluded with it behind the scenes. And President-elect Donald Trump is responding by tweeting this, quote, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th.
And the White House moved quickly to explain why it did what it did.
The president made this decision by himself, but not after close consultation with key members of his inner circle, including Vice President Joe Biden, Secretary of State John Kerry, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, and UN Ambassador Samantha Power. It's also important to point out what Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes had to say about this today. He said, listen, the abstention vote was preferred because the UN hasn't exactly been impartial on this issue.
When it comes to final status issues, we believe that those should be negotiated between the parties.
Rhodes repeating the assertion that the president's done more for Israel's security than any other U.S. president, noting the $38 billion military aid package signed very recently. But when asked whether he thought Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was committed to peace, Rhodes sounded a bit skeptical.
And at a certain point, the words and the actions become irreconcilable. And that's what we're concerned about.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State John Kerry said today the United States acted with one primary objective in mind, to preserve the possibility of the two-state solution.
And now Palestinians have welcomed the adoption of the anti-settlement resolution at the United Nations Security Council. Have a listen.
Today's resolution may rightly be seen as a last attempt to preserve the two-state solution and revive the path for peace.
This is a total defeat for those forces of extremism in Israel who believe in destroying the two-state solution and achieving and sustaining the apartheid regime that they're building in the West Bank. Occupation and settlements provide no peace and no security, and the only way to peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians is through a negotiated settlement to achieve the two-state solution on the 1967 lines, a state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital.
Palestinian presidency spokesman Nabil Abu Rudaina also called the move a big blow for Israeli policy, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office rejected the UN resolution and said that Tel Aviv will not abide by its terms. It also attacked the Obama administration for not vetoing the motion, accusing Washington of plotting against Tel Aviv. It expressed hope to neutralize the resolution with the help of Barack Obama's successor, Donald Trump, and Israel's allies in Congress.
It might be 'tis the season, but this sign celebrating the winter solstice says, let reason prevail. It's caused a lot of controversy here in Shelton. A resident wanted to put it up last year. The city said no. He sued. This year, they allowed it, but they also put up one of theirs right next door.
We would like a written agreement that they will continue to honor the freedom of speech.
Drivers let Jerry Bloom know what they think of his sign. With help from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, it reads, there are no gods, no devils, no angels. Religion is but myth and superstition.
It's the winter solstice, and a lot of people they associate this time of year with Christmas, of course.
People like Carol Tomasetti.
Christmas is about the birth of Christ. If you don't want to believe it, don't believe it. But you don't have to promote the fact that there is no God, because a lot of people do believe in God.
Bloom first wanted to put the sign up last year at a different park. The city said no, so he sued. This year he was allowed, like others, to take out a permit and put up a sign on the corner of the Huntington Green. A highly visible intersection that's decorated with Christmas trees and even a nativity scene.
You've permitted viewpoints to be expressed in this public forum. You cannot deny me the same right.
For the first time, atheists and other non-religious persons are explicitly named as a class protected by the law. President Obama has signed into law the Frank Wolf International Religious Freedom Act. The new law protects atheists, humanists, and other freethinkers around the world from religious persecution. The new law explicitly protects atheists, humanists, and non-theists and upgrades the 1998 International Religious Freedom Act. In particular, the new law states the following: the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion is understood to protect theistic and non-theistic beliefs, as well as the right not to profess or practice any religion.
It was a protest featuring the Founding Fathers, with George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin joining the Statue of Liberty, all hovering over a baby, in this case, a baby Bill of Rights.
And so we just wanted this to be a response that not everyone in America is Christian or Jewish or Muslim, that a growing percentage of us are non-theistic, and we need to be fully represented equally as well.
The non-traditional display on the South Steps, a direct protest against this traditional religious display on the Capitol's North Steps, replete with baby Jesus and three kings. No one is taking away the Capitol's religious display anytime soon, and the non-traditional scene is designed to generate reaction from those advocating separation of church and state.
I'm just glad that this is happening in Sacramento. I think that as the capital of California, this is an important conversation to have.
No one we found today is objecting to the Christmas tree that adorns the west steps of the Capitol. But for now, the display honoring the freedom to dissent is generating plenty of reactions.
It doesn't bother me one bit, and I'm actually glad to see that people have open mind to allow this to occur, and I think it's good.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says President-elect Trump's vow to expand the U.S. nuclear arsenal is, quote, nothing unusual.
Regarding the newly elected President Trump, there is nothing new. He was saying during his campaign about the importance of strengthening the nuclear aspect of the United States, about the strengthening of military forces. There is nothing unusual.
Now, overall, the tone of this press conference is that Russia is expecting relations with the U.S. to improve under the new president. And Mr. Putin also suggested he was ready to visit the U.S. should he receive an invitation from the new administration. Greg?
A Christmas card from the Kremlin arrived today, and there was no mention of the increasing tensions over nuclear arsenals. Instead, Russia's President Putin wrote to America's next president, Donald Trump, in a letter dated last week, that his holiday wish is that after inauguration, the two nations can, quote, take real steps to restore the framework of bilateral cooperation in different areas, as well as bring our level of collaboration on the international scene to a qualitatively new level. Mr. Trump says that was a nice letter, and that, quote, I hope both sides are able to live up to these thoughts and that we do not have to travel an alternate path.
To the latest in that deadly Christmas market terror attack. Today, the suspect killed in the streets of Italy after a shootout with police.
Tonight, this haunting video. Tunisian migrant Anis Amri pledging allegiance to the leader of ISIS, calling him Prince of the Faithful. Authorities believe Amri recorded it days before he drove this massive semi-truck through the Christmas market in Berlin. He met his fate early this morning, gunned down by Italian police after slipping through the porous borders of at least 3 different countries, crossing from Germany into France, boarding a train there to Turin, Italy, then on to Milan.
Investigators say he came out of this train station at about 1 a.m., but at that time of night, there are no more trains going to the town where he was killed, Sesto San Giovanni. So the question is, how did he get there and why?
At 3 a.m., 2 police officers on a routine patrol spotting Amri lurking alone. They found him suspicious and asked for ID. Instead, they say he pulled a pistol from his backpack and fired, shouting, "Police bastards." One officer hit in the shoulder, the bullet piercing his uniform. The other, a trainee, shooting back and killing the fugitive. And there are still questions. Did he have accomplices? Was he planning to meet someone?
Germany's Angela Merkel crediting European cooperation for the manhunt, but really it was the gut instinct of two beat cops that neutralized Amri. They can expect soul searching in Europe about how its most wanted man managed to evade authorities in 3 countries over 4 days.
Islamic State has carried out 3 suicide car bombings in an eastern suburb of the Iraqi city of Mosul, killing 23 people. And here you can see the video posted by the terrorists, allegedly showing cars bound for suicide attacks. However, the authenticity of the video could not be verified. We know that of those killed, 23 people were civilians and 8 policemen. Also on Thursday, a mortar attack killed 4 aid workers and at least 7 civilians. That was in what was the second deliberate attack on them in less than a week. It has been announced that some 70% of eastern Mosul has been liberated by the Iraqi army.
A devastating move from ISIL. The terrorist group posted a video online that reportedly shows 2 Turkish soldiers tortured and burned alive. The video was posted as a warning to Turkish president to withdraw from Syria. Turkey's military has admitted to losing 2 soldiers, but has not verified the identity of the men in the ISIL video. It also comes 2 days after the country suffered a major blow from ISIL, as 16 Turkish soldiers were killed by militants near the Syrian town of Al-Bab, with attacks that included 3 suicide bombings. President Erdogan has not commented on ISIL's video so far, while opposition leaders have already been demanding an explanation. If the video is indeed verified and ISIL has burned to death Turkish soldiers, a heavy response can be expected by the Turkish government.
Syrian government forces are engaged in a cleanup operation in eastern Aleppo, which is fully cleared of militants on Thursday.
This is one of the last quarters militants were in before exiting East Aleppo. This is one of their command centers in Al-Ansari area. We found tens of armored vehicles, heavy machine guns and tanks that the militants burned so the Syrian army would not be able to use them. This building used to be a school, but was turned into a prison by militants. They turned classrooms into cells. And here we found a field hospital that was equipped with surgery rooms. This drug had NATO stock written on it, as well as Ministry of Defense, Whitehall, London. It was shocking that in every street there were dozens of warehouses filled with rockets, mortar shells and ammunition of various types and sizes. Cannons were also positioned inside schools. One gas cylinder like this could raise an entire building. Walking the streets, we found dozens of basements filled with foodstuff, some of which were from the United States. The huge amount of weapons and food supplies were clearly enough to help militants fight for years.
A top Air Force officer sounding the alarm. He says his service is short 30,000 airmen.
That's right. Over the summer, top Air Force officials sounded the alarm, saying they are 700 pilots and 4,000 mechanics short. Now they say the problem is getting worse. The Air Force Chief of Staff now says he needs 30,000 airmen. In a statement, General David Goldfein said, quote, "The shortage of people has fundamentally changed the way we do business in terms of the operational risk day to day." Air Force officials say that they need more airmen to handle intelligence, reconnaissance, refueling, space, and nuclear forces. Earlier this year, General Goldfein said that his service is short of pilots, and this is what he told Pentagon reporters.
Here's the reason I believe it's a crisis. Air superiority is not an American birthright. It's actually something you have to fight for and maintain.
Your Air Force has been at war since Desert Shield, Desert Storm. This wing has been at war since that time for 25 years. We went to the Middle East when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and we never left.
At the start of the Gulf War, the Air Force had 134 fighter squadrons. Today, that number is only 55. The Air Force currently is doing 70% of the strike missions against ISIS over in the skies of Iraq, and it's also doing 90% of the refueling missions.
oħrajn. Nista' nsemmilkom titjiriet tal-ajru tal-Air Malta, tal-EasyJet, ta' Brussels Airlines. Għedin nerġaw naraw il-filmat ta' dak li rajna fl-imkien aktar kmieni, il-raġel joħroġ mill-ajruplan, ixejjer nies li jidru nizli mill-ajruplan. Hemm xi ċaqli ieħor madwar l-ajruplan jew wieħed mill-stewards illi kienu responsabbli.
On Tuesday, the Nigerian Customs Service said it intercepted 2.5 metric tons of reportedly fake rice, a brand called Best Tomato Rice, after being alerted by a customer. On Friday, the Health Ministry released a statement urging Nigerians to remain calm after a preliminary finding no evidence that the rice was plastic or consisted of toxic chemicals. Yet on Thursday, at a press briefing in Lagos, Mamudu Haruna, comptroller of the Federal Operations Unit, called the rice plastic. Haruna said, "We have done the preliminary analysis on the plastic rice. After boiling it, it was sticky and only God knows what would have happened if people consumed it." Haruna described the importers of the fake rice as economy saboteurs, as he believes they are trying to capitalize off of Nigerians looking for bargains during the holiday season.
According to a study published in The Lancet Thursday, an experimental vaccine against the Ebola virus was found to be 100% effective. CNN reports the results offer hope of better protection against the disease that ravaged West Africa in 2014, killing more than 11,000 people. Ebola was first discovered in 1976, and before the 2014 outbreak, it typically hit isolated African communities. Those outbreaks were much more manageable for medical teams to parachute in and treat patients. But the virus reached cities in 2014, spreading like wildfire and catching the global health community off guard. Ebola is highly contagious once patients are symptomatic. So as families and close-knit communities try to care for sick loved ones, they risk the infection. The vaccine is being fast-tracked by U.S. and European regulatory agencies. Pharmaceutical company Merck has promised to ensure that 300,000 doses of the vaccine will be available in case of a new Ebola flare-up. It will submit the vaccine for licensing by the close of 2017.
Okay, maybe now we can panic. The White House says robots are coming for our jobs. A new report says artificial intelligence is surpassing the abilities of humans in certain tasks, and some industries need to prepare for a shift, particularly those that include driving for a living. While the White House doesn't have a timeline for predicted job loss, it estimates a little more than 80% of certain driving jobs could be impacted as technology improves. But before a revolt a la iRobot ensues...
You like that?
Remember, the report isn't a net prediction, so it doesn't take into account jobs that might be created from the shift. It's possible that a phase-out of human drivers could create a need for more urban planners to design for autonomous vehicles.
A mother in Wisconsin at a desperate time in her life sends a private message on Facebook pleading for help and asking for prayers. Instead of sending the message to her friend, she mistakenly sends it to a stranger with a similar name. Well, her mistake is now turning into a Christmas miracle.
For Amy Rickle, the miracle started with a mistaken Facebook message.
And then I was immediately put, oops, wrong message.
She had messaged Brian Van Boxtel, a stranger, asking for prayers. She says she meant to send the message to a friend with a similar name. But you didn't know Amy.
I didn't know Amy, no.
But that was not the end of the conversation.
And he's like, nope, God puts us in people's lives for a reason.
After moving from the UP to Green Bay to be closer to her children's father, Rickle wound up homeless and jobless with her 3 children. They were living in a hotel when her money ran out and her car stopped working. They had nowhere to go.
Bawling and praying, and then that's when Brian had messaged me.
Van Boxtel said he was coming to pay for her hotel stay. A simple question prompted him.
What would Jesus do?
Van Boxtel convinced Rickle to set up a GoFundMe account.
After the GoFundMe page started, it blew up.
That's when Kathy Schumann offered Rickle the use of her minivan, then much more.
She really tugged at our heartstrings, and we just felt like this holiday season we couldn't let the kids be out in the cold, and we cleared out a room and brought them home.
Chad Morak got the wind of the GoFundMe too. He found out Rickle is a licensed practical nurse and connected her with a local medical recruiting office in Appleton.
Amy will attest there was a lot of work and a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on to really make this happen and to make it happen quickly.
After that, I was just compelled to continue working really hard to get our resume and references over to our client so we can get her a full-time position.
After an interview on Tuesday, Rickle will start that full-time LPN job January 3rd.
Pretty amazed. Still kind of find it unbelievable.
Also unbelievable, none of these people were friends before.
We're all strangers. We all just met today.
Chocolate. But now they share a very close bond.
I knew that God had me in the right place at the right time. And so I listened to my heart.
It's totally restored my faith in more than just humanity, my faith in God.
Showing that sometimes when you ask for prayers, you get a miracle.
From strangers to friends, unemployed and homeless to hired and housed, it all happened in just 9 days and in time for Christmas.